What is up, everybody? This is CJ. Welcome back to Hidden Assets. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the games I played this summer. That is from May through August, 4 months of gaming. I didn't forget to make this list. I just decided to do it at the end of the summer because I was lazy. So this summer I played 134 times. That is 134 plays. I had 51 unique games played, and I also played 19 new to me games. So I will highlight those in the video below. You'll also see a list of all the games I played if you're interested in that sort of thing. So let's get to it. The only thing I didn't record is the number of games I played in the number one game I played this summer, and that was Star Wars Unlimited. So Star Wars Unlimited, I took it to a tournament. I took Sabine Green to a tournament and top 8'd it. I thought it was pretty sweet. It was like a 64-person tournament. Did pretty well. And this experience was awesome. I really enjoy Star Wars. I played this game so many times. Been jamming games with friends, been playing online. I have some games to show you some testing games that I've been wanting to put on the channel, so those will be following this one pretty shortly. I played Wabash Cannonball 3 times. 3 times of Wabash Cannonball. That is by John Borer and published in 2007, and I have the Rio Grand remake edition. Now, Rio Grand made a decent edition. The only problem with it is the board is so difficult to read because of the way that they printed like this underlay of like texture, and I don't know why they did that, but it made it more difficult to read the actual board. If they didn't have that, this would be by far my favorite edition of the game. There are some other versions of the game that have a nicer looking appearance. The production and some of the earlier ones are very nice. The Queen version is very nice, but I don't have that one. I've got the Rio Grande version. Still good. I still love this game. Wabash Cannonball is a mutual investment stocks game where you're trying to manipulate, you're not really manipulating stocks, but you're buying stocks in companies and increasing the company's stock by building track and connecting it to various locations. And the only stipulation in this game is that you can only build track for companies that you own stock for. So there are a couple other things to it, but really great game. I highly recommend Wabash Cannonball if you get a chance to play it. Lowlands. I played one game of Lowlands by C and R Partenheimer. This is published in 2018. This game sort of sat on my shelf for a long time. It was one of the early Euros when I was getting into heavier, medium weight Euros at the time. Lowlands is, I've already talked about it, I think, on this channel. Maybe I have, maybe not. It's a worker placement game where you're placing your worker on your board. So you don't really block other people, but you can block yourself and force yourself to pay other resources, specifically money, which is points, in order to take an action multiple times. The way that this game has you interacting is through the dike, and it's set in the Netherlands, so the lowlands of the Netherlands, where you are trying to build a dike to keep water from spilling over and ruining your sheep farm, basically. And this kind of has a little bit of a stock element because if the water level is firm, if it stays where it is and doesn't like break the dike, then the value of sheep goes up. And so then you're more incentivized to invest in sheep. But then at the end of the game, if the dike breaks, then all of like your tokens that represent damage water could have done to your farm, like basically is negative points for you. So you're trying to do that. You're also trying to figure out a way to partner with other people, because every time you try to build the dike, you ask somebody whether they can help you or not, if they will or won't help you, and then they can offer to try to add some more resources to make the dike. But it's a really interesting I want to say it's like semi-cooperative, but it's really not semi-cooperative. It's a competitive game where you kind of like slyly ask people if they'll help you, knowing full well that they won't be able to. So there's some really interesting stuff in it. It is one of my favorite like pure Euros because of this interaction. It's very unique in my collection, and it's something that I played a ton when I first got it, and I'm glad to get it back to the table. That is Lowlands. I had 2 plays of Raccoon Tycoon by Glenn Drover. This was published in 2018. And this is an interesting stocks game. It is a stocks manipulation game. I do really like stock manipulation games, you might have noticed, where you are playing cards to take resources, and then the cards also determine which stocks will increase. You're also basically trying to buy up railroads, and there's some animal shenanigans, basically like your anthropomorphic animals doing stuff. It's a really interesting, quickish, like micro action game, I think they call it, where you just take one action and the actions flow around the table very quickly. I really like it. It's kind of like Family Weight Plus. I played it with my family. I got my mother-in-law to play it with me, which was cool, and she really liked it. Yeah, it's just a really enjoyable kind of almost say like homey, very very comfort food style game. So that's Raccoon Tycoon. I played Splendor, the 2014 release and designed by Marc. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It doesn't make my top 10 list of games of all time simply because there's so many, but it's just one of those games that I keep coming back to and just really appreciating the simplicity of the design. I know that a lot of people have moved on from Splendor to other games such as Race Arcana, which I also love. There are other games that have taken its maybe place in many players' collections, but I still play Splendor a lot. I find that it's just easy to teach, and people, especially new players to the hobby, really find it comfortable and fun. I played a Dutch Intercity. So this is a Heidema, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, design from 1999. Dutch Intercity, this is a re-release by Rio Grand, and it's part of their re-release of all of these cube rail games, just like Wabash Cannonball. So in this one, it's got this interesting element where you are blind bidding for track to build, and then you have a potential to get blocked by other people, and then you don't want to get overbid by the person who you might accidentally blind bid with. So if you may bid on track 21 and another player who controls another train bids on 21, then you'll have to have a bid off to see who builds that track, which could be negative for both players potentially. It's an interesting game. I think it didn't really hit with my group as well as I was hoping it would. It is a little easier to teach, and it is not very forgiving. That's what I will say. We played a 6-player game of Dutch Intercity, and one of the players flat out wanted to leave the game in the middle of it. So it's not always everyone's cup of tea, though one of my friends who usually has a difficulty with some of these types of I would say knife's edge games really quite liked it and wanted to play it again. So it's weird, and I think it's been splitting my group a bit. So I don't know when I'm going to get Dutch Intercity to the table again, but I liked it. I like these kinds of mutual incentive games, and I like bidding. So I also played No Thanks by Thorsten Gimmler, published in 2004. No Thanks is kind of a classic game of anti-bidding. You're placing chips on a card to not take it, and it's worth a certain amount of points. The goal is to have the lowest points at the end of the game, but there's kind of a little wrinkle in that if you get a card that is directly adjacent in number, so if I have a 22 and then I get a 21, then the 21 covers up the 22, and so I basically lowered my point threshold by 1, so I didn't gain any points. So it's an interesting game. I think I really like it. This was also a 6-player game. I am terrible at No Thanks. I don't know what it is, but maybe there's too much chaos. I always try and I always fail miserably, but it's a fun game. It's a good experience. It's one of those games where you're playing with people and a lot of shenanigans comes out. People like to taunt others while they're playing, at least in my group, and so I always like those kinds of games that could bring out character, could bring out some attitude, and people can be a little bit snarky, and that's fun. I played a new to me game that is Medici by Reiner Knizia. This was a 1995 release, and I played 3 3-player games and 1 5-player game. Now I gotta say, Medici has maybe become my favorite bidding game. And that's saying a lot because one of my favorite bidding games is also another Reiner Knizia game called Raw. And Medici is sort of in that sort of bidding style. In this one, however, you're bidding points. And so there's a threshold of points you're willing to bid versus points that you won't recoup. So you're trying to bid on a slew of cards that will be flipped over. It's kind of like a push your luck. Players can keep going, but then they have to stop at a certain amount. And then you're going to be bidding on those sets of cards, and you want to win them because they're different colors, and the colors increase the values of those goods or something like that. It's very abstract, but you're basically increasing you're moving up these tracks and trying to get furthest along on those tracks. And the person who's furthest along gets a bonus, the second most gets a bonus, and everyone else gets kind of not much. And you're trying to be first in a couple of different categories, and splitting with other people is so harsh. This is a game I've talked to people about where they feel that there's no comeback mechanism. Once you're ahead, you snowball ahead. I don't think that's exactly true, but I do think that this is a game that sits on that knife's edge where you're like, I might win, I might lose with this bid. So while I really like Medici, I think that the choices are really rich and interesting, and I love this kind of like sudden death bidding almost. I can understand other people's perspectives on it, that it's a little bit too hard, a little bit too unforgiving. But that said, the game takes 30 minutes, it's over, and then you can like do something else or try it again. So that's also one of the reasons I think Medici is starting to become my favorite, is because it's so quick. Even at 5 players, the game was like 35 minutes, 40 minutes. That's pretty amazing for a 5-player game. Anyway, so really, really fond of that one. It's probably going to end up in my collection eventually, so... Next, I played Moon River by Bruno Cathala and Yohan Servais, and this was released in 2023. Moon River was gifted to me by a friend for my birthday, and it is a fine game. It's basically in the King Domino bloodline. It's very similar. It has a little bit more going on. I don't love those games. I think that King Domino, I have like a giant King Domino set somewhere over here in my collection, but I never play it. Like it's okay. My daughter thought it was just okay, and we've never really gotten that to the table. I played Moon River with adults. It was 3-player. It was okay. I felt that there's a little bit too much take that in this game. You can actually steal people's cows, and cows are multipliers. So not only are you reducing someone's multiplier, but you're increasing your own. I felt that was a little bit too harsh, especially in a game where you don't always have control over what order you're going in because of other players getting in your way. So I thought it was a fun game. It's still in my collection. I haven't gotten rid of it, but I don't know how long it's going to stay. That is Moon River. Also, it was a new to me game. I played Summer Camp by Phil Walker Harding. I've talked about Summer Camp a couple times on this channel in previous videos. This one was published in 2021. It is a deck building game, baby's first deck builder, you might call it. It's pretty fun. Every time I end up playing it, it's just fine. I think the more I play it, the more I'm kind of done with it. I will play it anytime my daughter wants, but it's just one of those things like, if I had to play another deck builder, I would find something else. Like, it's not complex enough. It's not interesting enough to warrant the time it takes to play. So that's my opinion on Summer Camp, though. I think it is a fine like intro to that genre. I played Bloodstones by Martin Wallace. This was a 2023 release, and it's gotten a little bit of negative and positive reviews online. I think a lot of people have found that it's been not the best Martin Wallace game in recent memory. Obviously, Martin Wallace did Brass, is one of the two who worked on Age of Steam. There's, Via Nebula. There's a bunch of Australia. There's all sorts of interesting. Did he do that one? There's a zombie one. I think it was that one. A bunch of different games. He's very prolific. This one had the hallmarks of something I would love. It had bag building. It has a big map. It has dudes on maps. I like dudes on map games. It had hand management. So it felt like on paper, this is something I was going to love. And when I started playing it, I was enjoying myself. And I quickly understood that this is a game that is too simplistic in what it's actually doing, and it doesn't offer the player enough meaningful choice for it to be a long-standing game in a collection. for me, it felt like just placing out, spamming out towns was easily the best thing you can do because you score based on number of towns you have out. And it was very hard and very punishing to try to attack someone because they basically lose one unit and then they run away. And they could run back into a space that you occupied, causing a chain reaction of now I fight you, then you fight someone else, then you fight someone else. And it kind of became, it almost felt like a bit much ado. Like we were doing all this stuff, we were fighting, but ultimately all I had to do was just plonk my guys down, sit in a spot, never attack, and just like build a bunch of towns. It did come down to the end where this was a teaching game, by the way, so we might have, not been playing optimally. One of the players had played it before, and we came to a point where it was a 4-player game. Was it 4? Yeah, 4-player game. One of us was like, I was close to winning, but I wasn't quite winning. I was going to be second place probably, and on final scoring if we tallied it up. And one of the other players decided that they had a chance at winning, and so they attacked one of my spots, my places, and then lost because of a random draw from the bag of chips. Because they lost, I gained points, and that catapulted me into the lead. So I won inadvertently because someone else tried to win by attacking my units. I thought that was probably the most exciting part of the entire playthrough, and I also thought that it probably wouldn't replicate in another game because of the specific situation that we were in. I was very disappointed by the way the battle system worked. You pull chips out of a bag, and then you get to use 3 of the 4 of them. 4 if you have like a specific character or something. And those chips don't go out of the bag, and then you don't really building. They just go right back in the bag. So it's like a random draw of chips every single time. There's no strategy to pushing people and trying to get them to like keep drawing chips out of the bag, which is what I was hoping this was going to be like. As though, if you kept fighting, the chips get out of the bag, then they keep getting out of the bag, and eventually there's no more chips until it's their turn. So if you can put enough pressure on somebody, maybe they would run out of chips or not be able to defend. But that doesn't exist in this game. It's just simply a random draw in every case. It could have just been a dice roll. I felt like it was that random. People might disagree about that, but it felt like there might be a little bit of nuance, but the nuance wasn't there enough for me to really care. It felt too random. So Bloodstones was a new to me game that I wished I liked more than I did. All right, I played a game of Pusheen by Steve Warner. It's a 2021 release. It's a very silly game about collecting Pusheen's friends and cashing them in for events that Pusheen does. It's a kid's game. It's very silly. I do enjoy it for what it is. It's my kid's game. So, but that's it. Pusheen. Not talking too much about it. I played a game of Incan Gold by Bruno Faidutti and Alan R. Moon, which was published in 2005. Incan Gold, just a great push your luck game. It's so quick. You can play with anybody. They literally only have to make like one decision every turn, and it's stay or go. It's just a very, very satisfying design that I don't really get tired of. I don't know. It's very simple, but it's good. So it's cheap. I played one game of The Rich and the Good. That is Haben Good by Carlo E. Rossi, published in 2008. I got the re-release version. And by Ares Games, I think. I might have that wrong. But Rich and the Good has proven to me to be one of the best intro level, medium level stock games out there that plays in about 40 minutes. It's just a joy to play. It plays up to 5. It feels different almost every time. I know some games, there's the stocks go really high or the commodities go really high. They're not stocks, they're commodities, but they function exactly the same way. There is a lot of strategy in when you buy, which ones you hold, which ones you sell, which ones you put in your charity. So Rich and the Good has been just so good. It's just a great game. Very glad I have it. That one's not going anywhere. I bring it to game night a lot, and I will in the future. Next, I played Prussian Rails by John Borer. This is a 2008 release. Now, I really like Cube Rails games. This one I did so poorly at. We had to actually call the game because somebody was snowballing out of control. However, I think that this game was extremely interesting. The interesting mechanisms in this game, there's a merge mechanism. So you pay out when a company or a train merges with another train. That is, they just touch, basically. That's how you get payouts in this game. So the positioning is very dynamic and it's player driven, which I love. The other thing that I like about the game, which is a little bit controversial, is the way actions are taken. You don't just take actions on your turn. At the beginning of each round, people put a certain number of their tokens into a bag, depending on how far, what their position in the scoring is. So if they're ahead, they put, I think it's 1 or 2. If they're next, they put 3, and so on. I might have had that wrong, but it's something like that. And basically, you have a chance. Then like 4 or 5 are drawn out, and you have a chance of taking actions or multiple actions in a row based on the luck of the draw. So you can get good turns and you can get bad turns. You can get turns where you don't do anything. We had several turns in the game where a couple players did not do anything, and they felt, well, I'm gonna go get a drink. I'll see you in a little bit. So I think that the game was really interesting. And maybe if we were playing it better, this wouldn't have happened. But we ended up in a situation where one person was so far ahead, nobody could stop them, nobody could impact their money, and so we decided to call it, and they won the game. So I mean, I think that's an okay thing to do in these kinds of games that, like I said, with some of the other, like Dutch Intercity, sits on a knife's edge and can just tip over, and then that would be basically the end of the game. Like, you can't catch up. You have to go into those kinds of Cube Rails games knowing that those things can happen, and that they're features rather than blemishes on their design. I played 18 games of a little card game called Trio. Trio. So this is a memory game. It's basically like Go Fish or Gamers Go Fish, where you have a hand of cards and you arrange them from left to right, lowest to highest, and then you ask someone or yourself or for a highest or lowest card. And then you can also instead turn over a card in the middle of the table. And you're basically just trying to find a set of 3 or a trio. And the person to find 3 trios wins, or in the hard mode, 2 connected trios, which means like some cards have little numbers on the bottom which tell you if they're connected with that set, which makes it really difficult. So I like this game. I found it very interesting. By the way, it's designed by Laura Michaud and Saibepu for 2021. I apologize. That one it's a very cheap game, and I know a lot of people will probably find it a little bit trite, maybe. But I found this game to be just a joy, especially with kids. If you have anybody from like 8 years old to 12, they're probably going to get a kick out of this, because I played this with kids at work, and they just like loved it. Absolutely loved it. Could not get enough. We played this game every single day the last month of May. Insane. So yeah, Trio. Maybe not every single day, but just about. There were games going on that I did not participate in. So I think it was a hit for me. I like it. It hasn't hit the table that much since the end of school, so maybe not the biggest hit, but still fun, and definitely have gotten a lot of plays out of it. So that's Trio. Zoo Vadis. I played one game of Zoo Vadis by Reiner Knizia, designed and published in 2023. Actually, this is an old game, Quo Vadis, that was re-released by Bitewing Games. And Zoo Vadis is an interesting game. It is a pure negotiation game where you're trying to convince people to give you their votes in order to advance from one area to another. It's pretty simple, but ultimately it comes down to who can math best and take advantage of others the most. I think it's a very fun game. I don't know if it's Reiner Knizia's best game. I personally think that the bidding games are better. And I've heard that Stevenson's Rocket is also phenomenal, which I have not played. So, but I know that a lot of my friends love Zoo Vadis, and some of the people at the the meetup I go to really, really just cannot get enough of this game. So that's great. I really like it. I have a copy. I wish I could get my copy played a little bit more, but yeah, it's a fun game. It's not my favorite, but it's fun. I played Rome in a Day by Evgeny Petrov, designed and published in 2023. Rome in a Day is an interesting game where you are essentially building up like it's not really a themed game. You're taking these. It's a weird game. It's almost like an I cut you choose game, but it's not. Essentially, what you're doing is you're choosing to take a left or a right grouping. And if you take the left one, then the person to your right will get the other one. And then you just basically are choosing what the opponent is getting while taking something. Then you're going to take those pieces and put them on your board. You're making this little like hex grid map thing of colors, and you're trying to make colors and groupings, and then put features on them so that they score multiple of points. It was. I almost forgot that I played this game when I was looking at the name of it and what it was, because it's utterly forgettable. I'd say that the game was fun, especially I think we played 5-player or 6-player that day, because it plays a lot of players. I think it's 5-player we played. It was fun. I don't know if I'd ever want to play it again. I don't know. It's one of those games that was like, I enjoyed my play. I got the sensation, I think, that I'm going to get every game playing it. I don't know if it offers anything particularly strategic, deep. I think you just do the same thing every game. It's okay. So there you go. Rome in a Day. It's a cool design, though. I played one game of Middle Ages, which is a remake of Majesty for the Queen by Marc Andre, published in 2024, the new one. This is a visual update to Majesty for the Queen. In this game, it plays a little bit like the King Domino series, where you have your little piece and you're moving it to different tiles, and you're taking the tile you moved it from and then placing it on your board, and then everyone gets to kind of like activate whoever has the most of a particular region. It was a game. I think that this isn't really the kind of game for me. Like, I think these kinds of my piece jumps to another piece, and then I corner the market on towers so that no one else can have towers, and then I start doing attacks against other people and making their things break. That kind of game feels a little dated to me, and I think that Middle Ages had a little bit of fun in like the set collection aspect. You're collecting these tiles that might have icons on them, and the icons will do various things like give you coins, which, you know, basically ways to score points. But it didn't thrill me, and I think these kinds of the strategy in them is less interesting the more you try them, because ultimately there's really only a couple of options, and once somebody starts leaning heavily into like combat, you have to play a defensive game, otherwise you're gonna basically be in trouble. So I wasn't in love with this game, and I think I probably wouldn't play it again. Middle Ages is a new to me game, so was Rome in a Day, but it had some really great graphic design, some interesting choices where you can get these tokens that would add to the strength of your different colors that you activated. So there's cool stuff there, but it wasn't interesting enough for me. Very light, very kind of forgettable. I played 2 games of Reiner Knizia's Ra. Ra is one of my favorite bidding games of all time. It's starting to be challenged by Medici for my favorite. But this came out in 1999. I have the new 25th century edition, not the giant box, but I think I've shown this on the channel before, but it's just a phenomenal edition. It is a beautiful game. It's intuitive. It's difficult to predict. Like, you're pushing your luck to see if you can get better stuff, but you might run out of luck if like all the raw tiles are drawn. It's just fun, and it's not that long either. It's maybe like an hour and change with 4 players. You can play up to 5 too, so it's a solid one. So yeah, 2 plays of Raw, great game. Highly recommend it. Give it a shot. I played one game of Six Nimmt by Wolfgang Kramer. This was a 1994 release, and it's a classic now, I think you consider it. Basically a blind bidding game where you have a hand of cards, and you are going to choose that card, and then you're going to reveal it. And then that card is going to go in order, lowest to highest, all the cards revealed, to the next highest card in a row. And there are 5 rows, I believe 5 rows. And once a card row gets to 6, you bust the row, and then you collect the 5 other cards as points. And the goal is to have the fewest points in the game. So having timed your play right, you could force people to take points while you get none. It's a very fun game. It's very light. It's breezy. It's really easy to get real screwed in this game. So don't take it seriously, but it is a fun one, and I do recommend it. I played 2 games of Brian Boru, the High King of Ireland. This is continuing to impress with this Pierre Sylvester design from 2021. Keeps hitting the table. I think I like this game best now at 3-player. I think I have a total of like maybe 12 plays of Brian Boru, and I think that the more I play it, the more 3-player feels like the perfect amount of players. Mainly because you have a little bit more control over the tricks. You have a little bit more control over the locations on the board, and you have more cards in hand to play. So you get to decide a little bit more freely. But that said, it's still easy. It's still about predicting what other people are going to play. It's about trying to corner the market on specific cards. So like if I have most of the red cards, I don't have to worry about people trying to win red. I can try to like use those to take all of the Viking tokens and just like win that way. So there's lots of interesting ways of playing the game, and I think 3-player really opens that up. I think 4-player's fine, but there might not be enough room to wiggle, and I think I need a little bit of wiggle room with that game because it's very tight. But Brian Boru is a great game, so I recommend it. Give it a shot if you have not played it. I think it is Pierre Sylvester's best game. I played 1 game of a new to me Elysium by Matthew Dunstan and Brett J. Gilbert. This is a 2015 release, a pretty old one. I had thought I'd played this game before, but then I saw the components, and I think I might have watched a review one time. But Elysium is an interesting game about the gods, something. It's basically a card collection game where you're trying to get sets of cards in order to score points. You have to kind of bank them, not cash them in, but bank them in order to score them. There's an interesting element where you choose a color and you move your pillar of a color off your board, which means you can no longer, on your next action, take a card of that color because you've limited your color choice for the rest of the round. There's very interesting stuff going on. I thought it was a very satisfying design. It's one I want to play again. So that's Elysium. I played 7 games of Hearts in the Netherlands with some friends on vacation. There's not much to say about this. I love Hearts. It's probably one of my favorite trick-taking games. That's well known and nobody knows who designed it, but yeah, it's really fun. I also played 10 games of Gin Rummy. The same group. Not much to say here. It's like, fun stuff that we did when we were up late at night. I played 4 games of Taco versus Burrito. This is a game I wish would go away. I think this is one of the worst design games of all time. And I don't even think it deserves to be in this list, but I wanted to mention it because kids love it. They love it, and it doesn't make sense to me. There's so many better games, so many more evocative games that have you putting cards in other people's stuff and messing with them and playing take that things. This one just doesn't work for me. I feel like I'd rather play Exploding Kittens, and I've already exhausted all my time ever playing Exploding Kittens. So don't bother with Taco versus Burrito unless you just want your kids to like shout about poopy things and gross things. I played 7 games of Sea Salt and Paper by Bruno Cathala and Theo Riviere. it was published in 2022, but I only got a copy this year when I was in the Netherlands. It is kind of like now this game has a special place in my heart because I always get a game when I go abroad. And this one just was really interesting. I think it has some real staying power, but it also is harsh. This game's harsh. In this game, essentially what you're doing is you'd say, you're going to draw some cards. You're going to draw 2 cards and put one in a discard pile, or take a top card of the discard pile. Then you get to play some cards. And then if you have 7 points, you get to say stop to stop the round and then total up points. Or you can say last chance. And basically you're pushing your luck to see you have the most points and everyone else gets one more turn. Really interesting game. And it was pretty tight. One of our most recent plays with, I think, 4 or 5. I think it was 4 people, 4 adults. Definitely playing this with adults who are gamers. The game gets a lot more thinky and more interesting. So I'd take a look at it. It's also one of the cheapest games I've picked up in a while. Sea Salt and Paper. I played a new to me Marvel Age of Heroes by Rodney Thompson, published in 2023. But this is a re-implementation of Lords of Waterdeep, a game I have played before. I think it was good, actually. I'd say it was one of the more interesting wonky games I played this year. It definitely had... It sticks in my mind because I apparently found a completely busted combo, and we even looked it up and it was fine. But yeah, it was completely busted combo. My friends let me get something that let me basically not play the game and just like churn points. And I thought that was fun, but they didn't think it was very fun. So I'd say like there was a little bit of some words were exchanged for me having destroyed this game on its first play, but it was enjoyable for me for a little while. I don't know if I'd recommend it unless you really love the X-Men. I mean, maybe, but Marvel Age of Heroes, it's okay. I played one game of Phase by Jeremy Holcomb and Brian Reese, published in 2016. This is an AEG release, I believe. It's a very strange game. It's a card game where you have cards with creatures printed on the fronts and the back. So there's really no front or back to the game. And even the game just says like randomly shuffle your cards up and just start playing with them. It was super weird. And at times you're going to be you flip cards to pay for cards. I honestly can't remember the rules all that well, but all I got to say is it was confusing. We played it 3-player. I think that the idea was interesting, but it had that kind of Magic the Gathering light, like problems, like trying to revisit Magic the Gathering in a way with a new mechanism that they would never do just because you could. I wouldn't recommend Phase, unfortunately. I think it was a bit of a dud. I played 2 games of Blue Lagoon by Reiner Knizia. So Phase was also a new to me game, by the way. But Blue Lagoon was not. I played this game many times. But I played it twice in the last couple of months. It was a release in 2018. This is kind of in the same vein of Through the Desert or Babylonia. It's a little bit quicker than Babylonia. It has a little bit more scoring than Through the Desert, so it's a little bit thinkier. There's a lot of interaction. Some of the ways that you interact are simply by blocking people's like chances of ever connecting their chain of people. It's fun, it's easy, and it's thinky. I think Blue Lagoon might be one of Reiner Knizia's better titles, maybe his top 10. It's a underappreciated game in my view. I played one game of Iki by Kuta Yamada, and published in 2015. I have the new re-release of this game. I've talked about this on the channel before. I love Iki. I think it's a great game. It's a worker movement game. You walk around this like rondel, taking actions, buying or hiring rather workers to work in your stalls, and then what you're trying to do is get the most points by ultimately retiring those folks and buying buildings that give you points. In a nutshell, that's what you do. And I think it does it in a very clean, very well designed way. It is climbing my interest. It's one of those games I want to keep playing because I have not unlocked all of the stuff that it has to offer. There's so many interesting pathways and ways to play it that I feel are sometimes front loaded in the gameplay. Like you have to commit to something early, and it's a little bit hard to because you're afraid because there's a random fires that break out sometime during the game, and if your buildings or your workers get caught in the fire and you don't have enough fire protection, they die permanently. So committing to putting things in these stall areas, it can be like harrowing. But that's one of the reasons this game feels so interesting to me. It does something that I have not seen in a lot of games. It makes me fear for my pieces. It makes me fear for my characters. It reminds me a little bit of In the Year of the Dragon by Stefan Feld. Obviously not in the theme, but in the way that that game makes you feel that you are struggling the whole time. A little bit like that. Maybe not quite as dire or severe as In the Way of the Dragon, but it is a lot of fun, and that is Iki. I played 2 games of a game called Lattice Hawaii, although the person who taught it to me also pointed out that lattice is spelled incorrectly. It's spelled lat ice, which is not right. I think that's just a mistype something. Someone was sleeping at the wheel at that one. But I played 2 games of this. It's by Brent Vincent and released in 2019. I don't think you can really find this game anymore. I think it's out of print, but it was interesting. It's kind of like you're basically trying to get rid of all your tiles. That's it. I don't think you're scoring points. Are you even scoring points in this game? I can't remember. It's been a little while since I played this one. But it's interesting because you have these like wind tiles that push tiles away that let you combo, and that's really where the strategy is. It's like, how can you get these wind tiles by making pairs or triplets or whatever of groupings of a specific color or shape in order to get these stones that you could turn in to get these wind tiles that you can use to blah 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 blah. So it's a bit combo-y. It's pretty fun. I actually like this one more than I was expecting to. I did end up winning. I ended up winning this game both times I played it. I'm not sure if that's just a me thing. Maybe I'm good at these kinds of weird games, but it was okay. I think the rest of the table was less excited about it because I was abusing some of the mechanisms a little too much, or they felt like I was. I don't know. I'm good at those kind of abstract games, but anyway, Lattice Hawaii. If you can find a cheap copy of it, I'd say give it a shot. It's definitely better than Phase. Sorry, Phase. I played 1 game of Uno by Merle Robbins in 1971. Everyone knows Uno. I hate Uno. I really hate Uno, but I played it. I played 2 games of Brass Lancashire by Martin Wallace, published in 2007. And many of you know this is my all-time favorite game. I'm not sure if it still is my all-time favorite game. I played a lot of games this summer, and a lot of things have started to raise the bar on Brass. Brass is still in my top 10. I think it is a brilliant game. I still like Lancashire better than Birmingham because it's tighter, it feels meaner, and I think that those kinds of things are fun to me. Not always fun to other people, but I did not do very well in one of these games, and the other one I did pretty well. It was pretty close second place. So I really just enjoy this game. I think it's just a satisfying design. I wish I could have like a nicer board for Lancashire. Like Birmingham has the nicer white side that's like clearer, but whatever. That's the way it is. Played 2 games of Dune Uprising in person. One was a 3-player game, and one was a 4-player game. This is obviously designed by Lee Paul Denon and published in 2023 by Direwolf Digital. I will have to say that one of the games we played, was a 3-player game. We played with a custom set of cards, which was pretty interesting, which has helped me to narrow my card list for my specific list of for Dune Uprising, and I will be posting that very shortly. the list is complete. The video has to be edited, but I have that coming up. I'd say that Uprising for me, a great game. It's not as good as Dune with Ix for me personally. I like that the progression in Ix feels more natural, whereas I think in Uprising it feels erratic sometimes. And I think that that's a feature of the game too, not really a bug. I think that that's a feature where the game is so varied that you have these wacky things happen and you have to try to find ways to get those 5 points out of the 2-point or 3-point combat. Like those things are fun to do, but I'm just so bad at it, man. It's just, I don't know. There's something about Uprising that it's like too much planning for a game that requires you to like rethink your turn every single round. I still love it, obviously, but you might have noticed that I don't play it that much anymore on the channel. That's simply because I love Ix better. I've been going back to and playing a lot of Ix in my spare time, and I just find that that's a much more satisfying experience personally. That is me, not everyone else. I might be in the minority, so I apologize. I'm not trying to dump on Dune Uprising. I still love it, and I have my custom set. I like my custom set quite a lot, so I'll explain that in another video. All right, I had one play, A Path of Civilization. I believe I covered this in a previous video. Path of Civilization is designed by Fabien Guridel, and I played this online on BGA with Lannister, and just a 2-player game. Now, I think that this game was published in 2023. I think that this game was terrible on the tabletop. It took us nearly 3 hours to play this game with, I think, 4 players. It took me 25 minutes to play it with Lanny online, which says a lot. I think that and it was a lot more fun. I would say the overall of the game is that I like what it is, even though it's too big for the actual game, if that makes sense. The game itself is very small. You're just making a couple of choices here or there. You're buying a couple of things. You move on with your life. But the way that the tabletop version, the actual in real life version of the game is designed is you actually have to wait for everyone to do all these things. It takes a lot of time. People are like hemming and hawing about things. Sometimes people want to buy things, but then they can be superseded by other people who have precedence. So it just like the amount of dead time in Path of Civilization on the table was so immense. But when you actually play the game online and actually can feel the rhythms of it, it's a quick, simple game. And I wish it had been simplified in some way to make it feel like that on the table, because when we played it online, I was like, oh, this is actually what I think is intended. It was intended to play like this. It was intended to play fast. It was intended to be a quick, I'm going to take these cards, then I'm going to buy these cards, score, I'll get some things, and put some cubes down, and then I'll move on. And you do that 7 or 8 times or however many times. But it just doesn't work that way on the table. It feels like a big, massive game when it's this really small game, if that makes sense. So anyway, I would say try it on BGA. It's good on BGA. Goes quick, and that is, I think, the best way to play it, sadly. I played 4 games of Forest Shuffle designed by Kosh in 2023. I also have the expansion. I got the new Alpine expansion, which is awesome. It is a great expansion. I know a lot of people, a lot of critics have been kind of like naysaying Forest Shuffle recently, and I don't know why. I feel like I have a lot of plays of this game now, and I feel like every time I play it, it's more fun. This is one of those games where you're trying to collect sets of things, but the reliability of that ability to get those things doesn't always work out. So you have to figure out ways of like, okay, well, maybe I can go with a lot of trees here. Maybe I can work at this combo to play a card which lets me play another card. Maybe I can hold a bunch of cards with this mole and then play a bunch of bunnies all at once. Like there's all sorts of wacky things you can do, and the game feels a little bit like sandboxy to the point where I can understand if some players and some reviewers would say like, it doesn't hold my hand enough and tell me what things are good, because it doesn't. Like sometimes it's really good to get like, wolves and deer. But sometimes players will hold the wolves and never let you get them. And then you're just like, I've got these deer, but where are my payoff cards? Or like they might be going for birds, but maybe the bird scoring cards are in your hand. Like there's all sorts of things, ways for you to like play around with this game. And there's enough wiggle room to make it satisfying and interesting every time. I really like Forest Shuffle. I think it plays great at 2, plays great at 3. I don't know about 4 players. I think 4 players is where it starts to get a little bit too slow. The game can go a little long the more players you have. But that said, like if you have players who like to play fast, who don't care if they push the wrong buttons in a game, they like trying different things and ending up with whatever result and seeing how it works, then I think this game is just phenomenal for that group. If you're you're in a group that, where players think too much about their individual actions, it will bog down. And Forest Shuffle gives you so many options that it will feel like analysis paralysis times 100 for some players. There's just too much stuff to do. I don't have enough time to do this. I don't know which thing I should do now. It feels like hopeless. So I think Forest Shuffle can feel that way. But if you have a group that is a little bit more freewheeling and doesn't mind like making mistakes, then I think it's going to be great. So I think Forest Shuffle is a great game. I think it's really fun. I played 4 games of Mandala by Trevor Benjamin and Brett J. Gilbert, and released in 2019. Now, I don't know if I've talked about this one on the channel before. I think I might have, but Mandala is a 2-player only game. It's a abstract card collecting game, kind of. It's a card collecting game where you set the values of the cards as you go. It's so good. Oh my god, Mandala is, the more I play this game, and I played it probably like 50 or 60 times now. Like I've been playing it since it came out. Every time I play this game, I'm just like amazed by how rich your decision making is. You can, go for one of the other mandalas. The other ones you can try to like draw lots of cards. Like the individual play of what you're doing on your turn is pretty satisfying, and it's a great game. There's some nuance, obviously, to when you need to like try to close a mandala so that you can draft the cards from it, which ones you choose when you take them, which ones you force, like forcing the opponent to take something that is only worth 1 point, because if they take the other one, they might end the game and they know they're going to lose. Like there's all sorts of weird things to do, like with the kind of mind games here. Mandala, it's really good. It's really good. It's another one of those like cheapish $24 or $30 games. But it's staying in my collection and has risen in my estimation of one of the best 2-player only games, small box games I've got. And I think it's just phenomenal. Oh, by the way, played this online, one-on-one with Lannister. Thanks, buddy. That was a lot of fun. I really appreciated that. That was a fun session. This was the Mandala and Path of Civilization session. So good stuff. I played a couple games of Dune X on Dune Digital, obviously designed by Paul Dennen and released in 2020. Dune with Ix. What an amazing game. And I think going back and playing it after playing Uprising, it just shows you how absolutely tight, rich the decision points are in that game. I know a lot of people hem and haw and naysay the shipping track. I find it fun. I was like going back, I'm like, man, I forgot how fun the shipping track is. It's just like the dance around it, trying to figure out who's going to have the shipping track in what order is really cool. So I don't know. Dune X, man, it's a good one. It's such a great game, and we'll have some more X play on the channel, so look for that. New to me game, Wildcatters by Rolf Segel and Andre Spiel, published and released in 2013, published by Capstone Games. Wildcatters is about drilling for oil across the world. You're like big oil companies and you're trying to refine oil, send it to the continent, send it to different continents for points. Essentially, this is a very elaborate logistics game where you're trying to have a majority scoring for each region that you've sent barrels to, with the barrels counting as 1 point per for a value in that majority or plurality or however you want to explain it. We played this 4-player. It took about 4 hours for our first play because the first couple of rounds we didn't really know what was going on, and my teach wasn't the best. I have to admit, I wasn't doing the best job with my teach, but it was a complicated game. Once we got through the first 2 rounds and got to round 3 and we understood the flow of the game, and I can now teach this game a lot better, man, it was fun. I was worried after the first 2 rounds that players were just not going to want to finish it. But then when we got to round 3, then 4, then 5, the escalation and the arc of the game was such that we felt palpable that one of us was going to lose, and one of us was going to get close. We didn't quite know who was there, who was going to win, but we were close. Ultimately, all of us were about 4 or 5 points behind the next person. I think I got second place in this game, and man, it was really rewarding. It was like we finished it, and it was late. I think it was like a midnight at the time. We started at 7, and all the players, everyone said, "Wow, that was fun," and they said they play it again. But now the challenge is getting it back to the table because it is a heavy game. So Wildcatters, man, if you have a group that loves heavy games, if you like a group that is patient with logistics style games, they'll probably love it. I liked it a lot. I can't wait to play it again. It was one of those games that really got me going. And I love games that have this kind of arc. It feels like there's an arc to the story of what you've created, right? You're starting to like drill for oil here, and then someone is neglecting Asia, and then someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go over there and drill over there," and then people are like, let's join them over there. That's where the money is. Like, let's go over there. It's got so many interesting decision points in this game. There's some wonky stuff, I gotta admit. There's some wonky stuff with the way that the ships move from continent to continent or port to port. But once we figured that out, things became a lot clearer and things became a lot more interesting. So yeah, Wildcatters. I think this was one of the best games I played all summer. I played a 4-player game of Unmatched, designed by Rob Davio and Justin D. Jacobson, and published in 2019 or various years. This is the year of the first one, I think, but this game has been going on nonstop. I have everything for Unmatched. I love Unmatched. I just got the Slings and Arrows set like not too long ago, so I'm very excited to play that eventually. But we had a fun game playing. We had a 2v2 where I was playing as Elektra and my teammate was She-Hulk versus Robin Hood and someone who had tokens. I don't remember. Memory is hard when you get older. But Unmatched is just, what an amazing set. Amazing system. I love that they keep printing stuff for it, and it's just a fun thing to do. Sometimes it's like very cathartic to play, and other times you can really grind games and figure out how decks work. So it's got a lot of depth, and I just love it. New to me game, I played Wandering Towers by Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer. I played 3 games of Wandering Towers, a couple at 3-player and 1 at 4-player. It's a 2022 release. It was also, I think, a Spiel des Jahres nominee. Maybe. Wandering Towers is interesting. It's essentially a rondel where you are moving, you're playing cards and they either have you move a tower or a wizard, your wizard. And you have several wizards. The goal of the game is to get all your wizards into Raven's Keep, which is like this little bucket that keeps moving around the table, and also to fill all of your potions in whatever order you want. And the difficulty is that people will be moving the towers, and the towers stack on top of each other, and the way you fill up your potions is by covering up other wizards with those towers. You imprison them in those towers. And so you're like hiding them, and then people can move the towers, but they don't have to move the one with your guy in it. They can move the one below it or above it, so that the towers start to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's just chaos, but it's super fun. And you also have like some wiggle room with like extra free actions. You can cash in your potions to take free actions that are set up at the beginning of the game. There's some really interesting stuff with that. And yeah, so Wandering Towers I think it's a hit. I think it's a very good game. I don't know if, like, it is a memory game in some ways, because you have to remember where your guys were. And so depending on who you're playing with, that might not be their cup of tea. I didn't mind it so much. I think it's fun to try to mess up other people with that, and also to have your own guys hidden and then get it wrong, but then try to figure out a way to salvage your turn. There's some fun stuff with it. So Wandering Tower is very simple, very quick game, like maybe a 30-minute game, 40-minute game with more than 4 people. Really cool. I played So Clover with my family. We played, that's designed by Francois Romain, and designed and published in 2021. So Clover is a really fun party game. My daughter wanted to play it, which is an interesting choice for her. She loves reading, and she's very good at it, and she's working on her writing, so it was nice to play with her. And yeah, it's a good way to learn words. It's a good way to learn how things relate. I also think it's a very frustrating game for some kids, because, especially for mine, when she doesn't know what things are and you need to tell her what those things are. But that's all besides the point. I think So Clover is it's a brilliant design. It really is. It's more of an activity than a game. I mean, you really want to help people when it's a cooperative game. So, and much like, Just One, I think this one is just best when you're just having fun and goofing off and laughing at the goofy connections people make. It's fun. I have to mention this game because it is technically a game, but I played Dungeons and Dragons the entire summer. I probably sunk I don't know, 120 hours into this game this summer, because I was leading a campaign since the end of school, and through the summer through camps. So I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with kids for the entire summer. That's all I got to say about that. It was a lot of fun. I had a great time, but I'm a little tired of D&D. I don't know how many sessions that counts as. I just counted it as a game, but not as multiple plays. I wasn't keeping track. I have about 20 plays of chess, which I'm just going to mention because it's chess. I have 1 play of Lunar Rush by Victor Kolodiashny. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry if I pronounced that wrong, and I'm certain I did. Diashny and Alex Pei, published in 2023. Lunar Rush, I started out loving this game, and by the end I didn't like it at all. Let me explain what I mean. So Lunar Rush is a game about logistics. I like logistics games. It's about moving things from place to place. I don't generally like pick up and deliver, but this is not really about that. It's about taking resources from Earth and moving them to the moon so that you can refine them and do things with them. And then you turn those resources in and you send them back to Earth to sell them. So it's kind of a stock market game, but the stocks don't go up, they just go down, the value. So you're rushing to be the first to sell. That's essentially what's going on. The way you move things from Earth to the moon and vice versa are through these lanes. There's 4 lanes coming from Earth to the moon and 4 lanes from the moon going to Earth. And they take different amount of time, so different amounts of turns. Either instantly, they'll take 1 turn, or 2 turns. And there are only 4 of them, and we played a 4-player game. And it's interesting because you can get your things right away, but you can only carry fewer things. You can carry fewer things if you get them there right away. But you could load up a big sled of stuff, but it'll take like 2 turns to get there. So there's this interesting trade-off going on in this game, and I thought that was very satisfying. One of the cool things you can do, and one of the more interesting things I think with the design, and maybe on future plays this would be revealed, is that you can send workers. So it's a worker placement game, kind of, but you can send workers from Earth to the moon to do work. but you then have to be able to sustain them by feeding them and also housing them. And if you can't do that, after their work, you can send them back. You can send them back to Earth before you give them oxygen or put them in a house, basically your habitat, which I thought was incredibly satisfying. You can import all these workers, get them to work, and then send them away without paying them. I don't know what that says about me. It was very amusing when we were talking about it at the table. It was like very weird, but fun idea. But the game only has two main ways of selling things. Two main resources that you want to sell. You gotta go for. There's like these gems, and then there are these gold nuggets, which are just kind of like generic ore kind of things. Gold, I don't know what they're called. They had some like fake science name for them. And you try to build up this infrastructure on the moon in order to make those things, and it takes a long time. And the game, I guess, the fun of the game is to be able to sell those things before other people do. But in my game, I had like beelined to do one specific thing. And then when I sold one of them, and then someone else came out with they started doing it too. And then they undercut me, and this made it like impossible for me to sell. And it was satisfying for them, I'm sure. But I had this really bad moment where I worked the entire game to do one thing, and then it just didn't work. That's not the thing I didn't like about the game. Actually, I thought that was fine. The thing I didn't like about the game are that there are only 4 lanes going from the Earth to the moon and moon to the Earth. And the way that you get those lanes, the way you choose, is by player order. And the way you choose player order is by blind bidding a card from 1 to 5. That's it. If you blind bid a 5, you're going to pay 5 points, and then you're going to go first and choose. If you pay 1, you're going to pay 1 point, and then you're going to go last probably. But if you tie, you will pay that amount, and then whatever your relative position in previous turn order was will switch. And I found that to be extremely maddening. While you're playing the game and you're trying to figure out what people are bidding, and then people can just do random things, and then you end up last multiple times, getting really, really bad lanes to ship. Because you got to get the best lanes at the best time in the game. That's like part of the game. But when it comes down to a blind bid to determine whether you will or will not get those lanes, it felt to me that there wasn't that decision was arbitrary for the sake of the game. Like if I had to play the game without a blind bid, and we all just had turns, like one after another, and then it switched, we would all be doing the optimal play every single time. And the only reason we're not is because there's a blind bid systems that would just randomly screw you up. So I think that for me kind of ruined the end game, because I couldn't get done what I needed to get done, and it was simply because of a random thing that happened. Like I tied and didn't think that player was going to play that high, and then I swapped down to like 3rd place. It was a bit of a disappointment. I think that the game has some cool ideas, but I also think that there's not enough ways to win, not enough things to do with your moon base. Personally. Also, it was a weird blinged out edition, and it had like foiled cards that were incredibly hard to read. Like they were gold foil, and you're looking at these things and you're like going, what? And the text was really small on the cards, and you just couldn't tell what was going on. So I'd say that some design elements and some development elements could have been better. The next game I played was Allure by Satoru Nakamura, and it was published this year in 2024. This is an interesting dice rolling bidding game where you have a set of dice behind a screen, and there are a bunch of fish cards that have a threshold written on them. And basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be holding out these dice in your hand and then revealing how many you have. And then in order of lowest to highest number of dice that you have in your hand, you're going to roll them and see if you can catch those fish. You have like a bunch of D6s, one D4, a D12, and a D20, if I remember correctly. And so you're rolling those to get those fish. And basically it's like just catch as many fish as possible. They're worth points. Some of them give you some minor power bonus things, not very many. There was like an expansion that we were using that my friend had. And yeah, it was actually a really fun game. I played with my daughter, and it was easy to play. It was pretty tense, and yeah, it was a quick little dice rolling game. I quite liked this one. This was a new to me game, and it really did what I want dice rolling games to do. It had a little bit of tension. It had some push your luck because you're obviously rolling the dice. You hope that you roll enough dice to get what you're looking for. But you also hope that you're bidding low enough to go before other people, because you could basically take any of the fish as long as you roll enough. So for instance, if there were 3 fish, one at like a 20, one at a 10, and one at a 2 threshold, if you roll 20, you get to catch all those fish and nobody else gets to catch anything. So there's a little bit of that, but it was fun and it was quick, and I quite liked that one. So that was Lure. I played one game of Star Wars Rivals. I got a very cheap set of Rivals with a couple expansion packs, and played that one with my daughter. She quite liked that one, and it's this is a game that I'd say definitely is good for kids. It's good for adults. It's just really like a pretty fun game, surprisingly. The one thing I have to say about this game is that there are incomprehensible development choices in the way the cards are shaped. I'll just show you this. I don't know if you've ever seen this game, right? There are these minis in the game, and the rules are very, very simple. Like, you have these minis. I have a hologram, Ahsoka, and stuff like that. But like, the card shapes make no sense. So you see this. The cards are these like very strange. They're bigger at the bottom than they are at the top, right? It makes them very hard to shuffle, and also when you hold them, they feel strange. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, it's a weird design choice. You can still manage, but you can't sleeve them. So you have to shuffle them, and the card quality is fine, but they're almost also a little waxy, so they kind of stick together a little bit. I wish that they had like done a different choice there. Just regular cards are totally fine. They don't need special card looking things. I don't know. Anyway, I really like this one by Aaron Dono, Prospero Hall, and Ashwin Kamath. And it was published in 2023. I think they're on set 2 now, or series 2. So it's a really fun game. I liked it. It's kind of a mixture of... It's close to Marvel Snap if you played that mobile game, that mobile app. It's close to that, but tabletop. So that's kind of how I'd explain it. Anyway, I played one game of Aquatica, which is new to me, by Ivan Tuzovsky, published in 2019. Now, this is a game that had been on my radar for some time, and I was looking for it when it came out. It was sort of like a blip, rather, in the scene, and then it kind of disappeared, and I wasn't able to find it at any of the stores. But my friend got it and brought it over, and we decided to play it finally 5 years later, and it's really good. It's really good. This game is like 30 minutes long. It's ridiculously short, and like the way that you play is basically you are playing cards from your hand. You have like a set of 5 or 6 cards from your hand. You're playing them and doing what they say, and then you have one card, that you play, and then you basically pick up all your cards, kind of like in there's a couple of games like that, like Century Spice Road, and so on. And you are collecting these other cards that go to your hand. You're collecting some locations that go on your board. And when you put them on your board, they have these abilities on them, and they're at different depths. And in order to trigger them, some of them are extra actions, and you can push them up into this like double layered board, and they're basically vanishing in the depths or something like that. And then you trigger that action. Some of them are action effects that enhance other effects. So like if you wanted to conquer something or take a land that location that required more strength, you'd be able to do that. If it had a +2 strength on it, you could use that to do that. And you're basically trying to get them as far up, pushed up into the board as possible. And then you want to take a bank them action that puts them into your scoring area. That's pretty much what you're doing. There's a couple of other things to it, but it's really quick. And we play this game in 30 minutes with three people. And it was just a really great. I think I'm surprised that I haven't played this one before. It was one that I'm going to be looking for. There's some couple knocks up against it, I guess, in terms of the visual graphic design elements. I think are very small on the cards. I wish that they were not as pencil thin because some of the reds kind of look like the oranges at times. And you have these little cool plastic rays, manta rays, and they on one side of the manta rays there's just a color, and the other side is a symbol. And you turn them over to use them to do actions and things like that sometimes. But basically, like, those symbols are really hard to read because the mantas are gray, but they printed a purple on top of them on some of them. And so you can't even read them. It's unbelievable. And even if I'm like squinting at them, holding them close to my head, I can't even see them. Like, which symbol is this? So there are some very questionable graphic design choices in this game as well. And I wish that they had not done that and just made it much clearer, and it would have been easily more playable. But anyway, it's still very playable. It's just kind of annoying that this game that is otherwise like this incredibly, it's like not super thinky, middle light thinky game with some interesting choices, some really cool combo building, and it's quick, but there's just some things that get in the way. But very, very cool game, Aquatica. Check it out. I played a 2020 release by Robert Colo, Comic Hunters. Now, Comic Hunters is a set collection game. It is nothing but set collection. You're drafting cards and then collecting them. It's basically you're collecting cards that are comic books. And then some of those, they have like 3 different levels. There's like a level 1, 2, and 3 cards. And they have different Marvel heroes on them. Like mostly the Avengers, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, that sort of thing. And you're collecting them, and at the beginning of the game, some of those heroes are set to be a little bit more popular, a little bit more valuable than others, just randomly. And so as you're going, you're trying to collect those heroes, and you're trying to put them in sets of 3 or more, and you're scoring points at the end of the game for those sets, basically. That's the game. And you kind of like go through this procedural, like first we go to the comic book store, then we go to the convention, then we do these things. And each of those separate little places you're going is a mini game of drafting. And some of them are good and some of them are bad. And I would say not bad, I'd say they're boring. Some of them are interesting and some of them are boring. The one that was most interesting was definitely the convention one, which has a row of 5x5 grid with a space in the middle, and you can kind of like shift cards and then take all of one type of hero in a row or column. That was the most interesting mini game. The first one was simply like you have 4 cards or so, and then you like take a card and pass. Just regular hand drafting, pass drafting. And then some of the other ones were like a Dutch draft. I like Dutch style drafts. In this one, you flip over, you can either take a row, or you can flip over a card and take a row. Oh, sorry. You can either bid for a row. I can't remember. There's like 3. The ones there's a bid and one there's a flip over. There's like they're very similar, and unfortunately the ultimately doing it is so minor. It's either you get 4 cards or 5 cards. It doesn't feel like the effort put forward to like either bid or to like draft them is too significant. Everyone kind of gets what they want. Like if I get all the Hulks, you're going to get all the Thors, probably. If you get all the Black Widows, someone else is going to get the Doctor Stranges. It just tends to go that way. And so it just comes down to which of the heroes was most valuable throughout the game. There's definitely going to be some strategy, I guess, and you can hate draft things from people so that they can't get their 11th or 12th Black Widow or whatever, which is a thing you could do, but it's not as strategic as you'd think. So I was a little bit disappointed at Comic Hunters. Also, the quality of everything in this game it was terrible. It was miserable. Like the cards are super thin. A friend of mine who hates sleeving cards, he's like he's against it generally. Sleeved his entire set because they're so paper thin cards. The tokens are very flimsy and thin, and there was even a miscut card that had or misprinted card that on the back had like a white line going down the side on the edge of it. So there's just, I mean, that didn't affect the gameplay because it doesn't really matter because these things are just drawn from a deck and then you kind of draft them face up. But it was just one of those things where you're like, this just seems lazy and it could have been done better. And I'm surprised that it has a Marvel license attached to it, given that the quality of the components and what you're actually getting is lesser than you would expect from something like that. Anyway, Comic Hunters. I'd say if a friend of yours has it, give it a shot. It's not a game I would ever pick up. I probably won't play it again. It's a meh game for me. All right. The last game I played this summer is a game that I had been wanting to play for a while, and it's definitely in the top 3 games I played all summer. It might be one of my favorite games from this duo. And this is Mexica by Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer. And it's published in 2002 by Yellow. And this game is amazing. This is an action point system game. So you have 6 action points to spend on your turn. And the goal of this game is fairly simple. You have these canals and you have these buildings. And you're trying to build these canals to make little sections of the board. And then you want to put your buildings in those sections in order to score for an area majority kind of scoring system, right? So if you win it, you get the highest scoring points. Then if you get second place, you get the next scoring points, and third, you get the third scoring points, so on. And then there's ties and things like that. But there's also this little wrinkle in this equation, and that is that your piece that moves around the board, you can build anywhere, but you can only build buildings if you're in the region that you're building in. Also, there are these bridges that you can move up. You can build bridges over canals, and you can move up on the bridges and then kind of teleport to other bridges as long as you're moving uninhibited through the water. So you can't skip a bridge if there's like 2 bridges and then there's one in the middle. You can't go to the one on the other side if it's not connected to another waterway. So there's some interesting things there, but you're kind of moving around the board, doing this stuff. It's area control, area majority style. And it's very simple. But with those 6 action points, you have enough choice and flexibility. The game feels very open, sandboxy, player-driven, and it's incredibly tense. Because someone comes in and tries to up someone else or put an extra point. I should probably explain how these buildings work. They have a 1-point building, which are the smallest ones. They have a 2-point building, they have a 3-point building, and a 4-point building. So they're like these pyramids, these Aztec-style pyramids. And you're placing those, and they cost a point value equal to their action point value equal to their value. So in order to place a level 4 building, I'd have to spend 4 action points, and so on. You can kind of interpret the rest of it. And so you're trying to figure out the best way to spend your 6 actions on your turn. You also have the ability to take 2 bankable actions a turn. You can take those tokens and then save those actions for later, which is essential in this game. Definitely keeping like several of those in your pocket ready to go, so you can just spend all of them in one turn and have a big, massive, explosive turn. This game, so I ended up winning this game. So obviously I have a little bit of winner's bias thinking that this was such a great game, but everyone at the table loved it. This was not the first play. This is the first play for me and one other person, but 2 of the other players had played it several times before, maybe 2 to 3 times before, maybe more for one of them. And everyone had a great time. There was a talking points of how of potential actions throughout this game. After we finished it, we kept on talking about what could have happened if you'd done this or that. And there were so many interesting things that happened. At one point in the game, I ended up blockading myself on this little edge of the board, and I was like hoarding a bunch of action tokens so that if somebody tried to teleport you, one of your actions is spend 5 points to teleport anywhere on the board, but it's basically your whole turn. if someone spent their actions to teleport, I had enough actions to fill up the entire area, end the game, or trigger the end of the game with all of my points, and then basically take back the location. So nobody did that. I sort of threatened to do that, and then I managed to move out and kind of steal a couple other locations. So it was really interesting. If you've ever played Renature, Renature is kind of a newer, slightly less fiddly version of this game. I still prefer Mexica to Renature. I think Renature is a very good game. But there's some like interesting aspects to Mexica in that it's a very tight, well designed, well thought out game. It just feels like everything is clever in how it's designed. And Kiesling and Kramer are by far my favorite duo working in board gaming. This is an older game, obviously, but Heaven and Ale is one of my all-time favorite games. I have lots of their games in my collection, either solo or as a duo. They have put out some truly remarkable games. I would check this one out if you can. If you can find the yellow version of Mexica, it is amazing quality. The pieces that come in the box, the temples or the pyramids, are these heavy resin things. And it's just, I was like, wow, I didn't realize that this game was such high quality components. Like, I honestly didn't. I thought they were like maybe plastic or something like that, but no, they're like really, really chunky pieces. So, that added to the experience, of course, but the actual gameplay was what really stood out in Mexica. So I would check it out. It's a phenomenal game. The one thing I would say, if you are prone to analysis paralysis, is that the games where you have 6 action points means you have like a menu of stuff you can do, and it can be a little bit daunting if you're like, oh, I want to do this and this and this, does that equal 6? But if you played one of these games before, or if you're willing to like push buttons and do things that might not necessarily win you the game, but you want to see if it works, kind of like flow with it, just go with it, then this game could be played pretty quickly. We played it in about 2 hours with 4 players, which I think was reasonable. And no one was really dragging. I think, one player had a little bit more AP than the others. There were a little bit more thank you turns toward the end, but we went through the first age in a reasonable amount of time, maybe like 40 minutes, and then the second half and the rest. So it was great. High marks for me. I think this is going to eventually make its way into my collection if I can find a copy. I have one more game that I need to add to this list, and that is Heat, Pedal to the Metal, which I played 2 games of, and this game was published back in 2022, just 2 years ago. I played 2 games online with Lannister, Michael, and Rick, and it was a good game, good couple games. We were trying to decide, or help Michael decide, if he was going to be playing this game in the World Series of Board Gaming, which he's going to be doing this year. So it was a lot of fun. We were trying to figure out how to break the game, if there are any kind of like better drafts we could figure out for that. And it was fun. I ended up winning one and losing horribly in the second game. And that's it. Those are the games I played this summer. That was a lot of games. If you have any questions about my experiences with these, you'd like to know more about these games or how they sort of fit into my interests, whether I would, play them again if I didn't mention it, or whether I'd rank them highly or lowly, just let me know. And thank you all for watching. I will see you on the next video. Take care.